my name is Charlie Sturgis. I'm currently the executive director for the Mountain Trails Foundation. I am also the previous owner with my wife, Kathy, of White Pine Touring. And I personally have been involved in backcountry skiing since 1976. And yeah, I've been pretty consistent, probably backcountry skiing up until the last year or so.
And you've managed to stay alive.
It's been dicey here and there.
Really? Okay.
I don't, one of the things I don't think any expert is ever going to tell you that they didn't have their go at it. So, and I think almost any sport that you're out there trying hard at, as maybe an up and coming person trying to learn something, which we all have been, right? At some point, we're bound to make some mistakes. I think people have looked at mountain trails for certainly our opinion, our technical expertise. And like I said, my background is I've also been an area instructor and an AI instructor, and I've also guided. So, there's a reason you would call me to find out a little bit about what might be going on.
I know that we've had a lot of problems. I mean, we're getting close to surpassing the 2007 record of 13 deaths, right? Oh, no. 7 deaths in Utah.
Yeah, in Utah. Yeah, I was going to say 13 might be
overall in the U.S.
Throughout the U.S., yeah.
And so we're at 6 right now. And because of the 2 that happened in Park City just last week, they have decided, or they as in Vail Resorts has decided to, for temporarily, shutting the backcountry access gates. And I know that somebody who doesn't backcountry ski at all thinks, yeah, do that. People are dying. But there's a big backcountry voice that says, no, we assume the risk. Where does everything come in as far as both sides of the argument and what's right?
Okay, let me start with a little disclaimer. We're having this conversation for educational purposes and certainly not trying to point the finger or blame any particular organization or individual, and also not second guessing decisions that people make out there. I mean, you have done it as well. We all make decisions, good, bad, or indifferent at times, and we have to live with them. There's some obligations probably on the part of the ski areas to maintain access to public lands, which is part of the issue that we have with the Park City ridgeline. And there's a significant liability issues there in the US and almost nowhere else. They try to make it as safe and as reasonable as possible, but they still have a herd of attorneys that are, worried about their liability. So it's complex, that's for sure. If today I call it high risk and I close the gate and tomorrow I open the gate and someone gets hurt, then you're responsible because you opened the gate. Now, if you just leave the gate open and say, hey, it's hazardous all the time, and this is kind of layman's, and I'm not an attorney by any means, this is kind of the layman's version of it, is basically you become liable by having decided one way or the other. And then if you're wrong on the next, on the other side of it, then you're liable, which is the crazy part of the whole legal system in the US, and especially regarding liability especially in outdoor recreation.
So how do you see a solution to the situation? So right now we have public lands on the backside of Park City with gates to access it or not access it. Right now, Park City has decided we're going to keep them closed because we don't want anybody going out there. And yet you can go to Mill Creek, and they've asked people not to go in the backcountry right now because of the accident they just had, but they haven't closed that. They've just said, please don't go, right?
Yeah, of course, you're talking about Forest Service land, so federally regulated land. The Park City side of the ridgeline is, of course, private land, and actually, it's not 100% clear where this fits in at the moment, but the 9990 tower, I believe, sits on actually school trust land. But the desire to have a gate up there was to provide access. Probably the problem with that gate versus lots of others is it is probably the easiest gate that you can access serious ski terrain out of any of the Snowbird, Alta, Brighton. Brighton may be a little bit easier because you go right off the top of Millicent.
Mhm.
It's not that hard to, if you're crossing your way over the figure eight hill, that could be hazardous. And I don't know whether they close that gate. But the other thing is, you get off the lift up there, and if you're just from out of town and you're looking for that powder day and it has been a little sketchy like it was this year, I mean, when you get off 9990, you got a pretty clear view of a whole lot of powder, and you have pretty easy access. So the decision to impulsively step out of bounds, step over maybe outside of your skill level, it's pretty easy to do right there.
Mhm. I haven't really paid attention to the signage lately up there. Does it say stuff about having a beacon,
Yeah,
assumption of
it
risk,
has,
all that
it has a
stuff?
beacon check thing there. But if you compare it to a gate like Peak 5, you get off the top of that lift, you don't see anything. All you see is forest. And yet there's a trail. In fact, I've talked to several locals recently. They're going, "What do you mean Peak 5?" And go, "Well, you can go out Peak 5. It's not open all the time because sometimes they're doing control work on the area that overhangs the Dutch Draw area. But Peak 5 is maybe a 20-minute hike up, and you're on the ridgeline for sitting between Dutch Draw and McDonald's Draw. So pretty good access. But if you're a tourist, you didn't see it. You don't even know it's there. I mean, it looks like foot traffic going to the patrol shed. So that's kind of a different deal. I mean, you just don't see that terrain to be tempted to go there.
Mhm. And that one's closed now.
Yeah, which is probably we hope that Park City is sorting out the issues. I mean, they've done the right thing in some respects in that here we had a number of accidents, and we just had another major accident, even though it's not from near the area. It's still an indication of the extreme hazard that's out there, which arguably could be the most extreme hazard cycle we've ever seen in the Wasatch. Yeah, this is a wild year, and you've heard Craig Gordon say it repeatedly. You hear people, you hear the forecast Forest Service guys. I mean, they have unfortunately had to beat this dog to death, and that it is totally hazardous out there. You should only be out there if you really truly have the skills, and more importantly, probably even the skills, maybe the knowledge and experience to apply them correctly. People are going out. The pandemic has put a super load into the backcountry. I
And
mean,
so
both.
it's not just, so you believe that it's not just people making that comment and saying, oh, COVID, people don't want to deal with the resorts. They want to go out in the backcountry. I mean, I saw that at the end of last season when the resorts were completely closed. There were more people going in the backcountry.
Well,
Do you really think it's a lot more
I think
prevalent this year?
the stat that the sale of backcountry AT gear was up something like 160%. And at the time, and this is kind of understandable because the equipment's expensive, right? I mean, it's about $2,000 to really get boots, skis, binding, skins, right? We're not even talking about your transceiver, shovel, airbag, air pack, So the fact that the equipment was at 160 some odd percent, and don't quote me exactly on the number, but that the accessories to go with it, the safety equipment and so forth, was lagging way behind. Now, at the time of a purchase, I can see that, you just spent $2,000, right? So maybe it's hard to cough up another grand for safety equipment. But I think that probably caught up at the end of the day. I don't know one way or the other. You would hope it did.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly we got a slow start to the year. Safety equipment is expensive. And as I sort of used to joke, you hope it's the most expensive toy you buy that you never use, right? Is your transceiver. And yet you can't afford really to be out there without one.
I mean, you're an experienced backcountry skier, and I'm sure you check in with the Utah Avalanche Forecast Center on a regular basis to see what the forecast is after snowfalls, even after 3 days and that kind of stuff. What goes into the mind of somebody who decides to go out into an area that says high risk?
I was thinking about this earlier today when I was walking the dogs, and I mean, a certain part of it is human condition, right? I mean, we're willing to take risks. Some of us are willing to take more risks than others. If you remember in the Alex Honnold movie, when he solos El Cap, they talked about the size of his brain at the risk-taking part, right? That it was super small. So you had this really highly skilled athlete with a really high tolerance because he's got this little regulator there for risk, and he's able to do what he does. They're able to learn to do this so quickly now that all the sage experience isn't coming along at the same rate that skills are. And we saw this in the 80s as well, as that as the equipment improved, people's knowledge did not improve with it right off the bat. And we oftentimes felt like selling better equipment to a good skier was almost like handing him the weapon to hurt himself. It's difficult. I mean, we have great information out there. You have an incredible amount of pressure on the backcountry, summer, winter, spring, fall now. It doesn't really matter. And there's bound to be, like being in a high traffic zone, there's bound to be more incidences than in some rural area. And the Wasatch is probably one of the most accessible areas. It's one of the closest areas to a large population center. Denver, you got to go travel a few hours, right? So you look at 2 million people sitting on the Wasatch Front, piling into the Wasatch 30 minutes away. It's pretty easy to see where the numbers are super high and the chances of an accident grow as well. I think especially this last month, you'd have to live in a hole not to understand that the hazards out there were extremely high. I mean, we had people who have gotten killed. We have repeatedly talked about it. We had these incredible wind episodes that are piling snow on top of that old layer that's been there since November. So, I mean, you'd have to be kind of really blind to it all.
Have you gone out at all this season?
No, this year I was living through a little bit of COVID, and then which wasn't necessarily a terrible, but I was isolated, and then I actually tore a hamstring, and quite honestly, I've been climbing quite a bit.
Yeah. So what are the arguments, the pros and cons to keeping the gates shut or opening the gates? What are some solutions for Park City to make everybody happy?
Boy, I don't want to stick too many words in their mouth. What is I believe, and this is kind of the way Snowbird and Alta basically are the gates are lower than the hazardous terrain. Snowbird does a transceiver and shovel check, and they also regulate their gates, pretty much only open their gates during low hazard. Now they have a different legal setup, which I can't explain 100% by any means. Snowbird, Alta are all on Forest Service lands, right? They have these 99-year leases, and their gates are under the same permit, so they're allowed to regulate their gate. Okay. That's not the case necessarily for Park City, who's on private land with different legal obligations, and they want to provide access still to public land, which is honorable, right? I mean, they're not trying to tell you can't access the land, and even though you got to buy a lift ticket or have a pass, but at least they're still providing some access. So, but their legal burden is way different probably than the Forest Service, Snowbird, Alta, in terms of actually having people go into a less controlled or uncontrolled area.
People who don't backcountry ski will say, don't keep the gates closed, make it out of bounds. If somebody's going out of bounds, they can get arrested, whatever. And then people who do backcountry ski say, let us, do it at our own risk. How do you balance those two interests?
It really comes down to the operator at the end of the day. And the operator has to make intelligent decisions. And I guess if you close the gate, Jill, I mean, you significantly reduce the risk of someone getting hurt outside the gate, right? Because it would be probably associated with a fine and things like that, which I can tell you I have ducked a rope and gotten caught before. And I would also tell you that I thought it was really worthwhile.
Cut it to it, at least once.
Yeah, just to be completely transparent. But as you also have seen that, gate or no gate, I mean, we've had, the Mill Creek accident doesn't involve a gate. We still had significant death there and a tragic accident. And even on lower angle slope and so forth. So the gate isn't the only thing. It's really about skier knowledge. And as I've sort of like to think, there's avalanche science on one side, which we go take an AVI course and we learn how to dig a pit and evaluate some risk and so forth. But there's also backcountry artistry, right? You learn to be you learn to be a more sage, competent backcountry skier over time. The 99
always open
all the time. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So regardless of hazard, and that's kind of, but once again, we go back to that scenario. The legal issue is if you close it today because of the hazard and open it tomorrow, then people assume there's no hazard and they get hurt.
Right. So then what could they do that kind of appeases the backcountry skiers? Because I'm sure they're, upset about it. Versus, and also takes care of Vail's concern over liability.
Well,
and safety.
And you gotta. So I always thought there was a solution to this back in the 70s and 80s and whatnot. Because certainly as a business that rented climbing equipment, we rented transceivers, we taught lessons and so forth. We taught backcountry courses. So, we were significantly liable. I always felt like the real litmus test should be centered on the idea, if you're going to be liable, it should be gross negligence. Like you parked the snowcat in the middle of the slope and someone hit it. We're responsible for our actions. And unless someone's done something to cause you to get hurt, skiers aren't out to hurt anybody. In fact, they're trying to do everything they can not to. So when you look at what to do with the, gate like 9990, it's really complex because of the legal issues. I think that if there was ways to mitigate the liability to the ski area by addressing the legal issues in a different way, that would be super cool. I don't know what all those ways are. I have time at times. I think I have some answers, but attorneys are,
What would it be like? Better signage or?
No, I think a little bit. Once again, the old gates before American Ski Company were much lower. 9990 didn't exist, so maybe we should go back to the old way.
Moving the gates.
It made it a 45-minute to an hour trip, and you had to have skins to get to Square Top.
Okay.
So
where would that gate be then?
Well, it's hard to say whether it can go back. Just by the way, it does cross some private land, but that gate was over by Saddleback.
Okay. Top of Saddleback?
Top of Saddleback, just off the saddle, just off the top of the lift area.
Okay.
And there's an old double track takes you up to the Mill Creek Ridge, so you're actually right on the crest trail at that point, and you bang a left, and you're over on driveway, and you keep going. But even to get to Corn Bowl, a person from 9990 can boot a couple times and then glide all the way over. If you're going from down lower, you're going uphill all the way. And quite honestly, arguably, it would improve the skier experience who is going out, because there would be less traffic, there'd be less tracks and so forth. So,
Well, and I know like the accident that happened over the weekend was triggered by another party while one party was coming up. And so,
you know, they may have never even seen one another.
yeah.
Did they gang ski it? You know, did one skier just catch a corner where the trigger point was and everybody was already on the slope, right? You know, some few people ski in the center, but you know, there's definitely trigger points on a slope like that, especially in conditions like we have. And then of course that trigger point is what takes it all the way across the slope, right? I mean, you've been through the AVI 101 stuff, or AVI level 1.
And it doesn't look like there's any place to get away from it. There was no shoulder from where that
It
slide.
doesn't look like there was a lot of escape route involved in that area. So, but you know, I also know it has no real previous history. So it's
Not like square top.
unlike possibly Square Top or, you know, even Dutch Draw and McDonald's and a whole lot of areas, north side of Reynolds, you know, you can go all over the Wasatch Front avalanche prone terrain that has history. And yet at the same time, you can also go all around the Wasatch and find safe terrain that has no avalanche history. So there's good skiing to be done. It's just going to be lower angle, fun skiing, right? And probably gonna have to ski with you and 20 or 30 other friends that showed up as well. So especially in the Wasatch. Wasatch is not privileged to uncrowded slopes. I mean, that's the 70s and 80s. That ship has sailed at this point. I'm hoping, I don't know one way or the other, I'm hoping that the closure that we're looking at the moment will be resolved sooner than later. I would hope that it doesn't go to the end of the season.
And a resolution would look like either moving the gates or just reopening them?
Well, just maybe if I had my first recommendation would be go back and open Peak 5. You know, and my second recommendation would be let's see if we can get the old gate back in go mode, which, like I said, probably requires a private landowner permission. And in the meantime, I kind of live on this whole theory in my mountain trails and public world that you don't want to take something away until you found a way to replace it, right? So we're kind of taking something away that a whole lot of us enjoy, and yet we don't have an alternative at the moment. So it'd be nice to have an alternative at this point. You know, you go to any other part of the world, and you're not going to find the liability issues associated with outdoor recreation like we do here. It's not going to happen. In fact, you're responsible for removing your own body off the slope, you know, at the end of the day. So, so it is, we are the anomaly in the outdoor recreation.
We're all victims, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault.
Yeah. It's tough. I feel sorry for, the ski industry and ski area managers.
It's hard for me because I'm like, you should take the course, you should have all the gear. There's notifications at the gate of what the expectations are, and you walk out those and it says this is not our property. You are now entering the unknown and you assume the risk.
Well, it's pretty blatant too. I mean, I'm pretty sure it says you can die outside this gate.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because before, it was sort of your typical indemnification kind of sign, right? Oh, blah, 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 blah.
But then like a skull and crossbones at Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be more straightforward than that. So, but it's also still, once again, it's the lure of the backcountry experience. It's freshies that you might get out there. It's a cool story you get to tell while you're drinking a beer.
Absolutely. But I don't know, maybe there should be, when the avalanche I don't know if they have this there, but when the Avalanche Forecast Center makes their forecast for the day, is have it posted.
I actually believe they do. I mean, I'm weak on memory just from last year,
I
but
know, I think in Jackson they have a little arrow, like a little
yeah,
gate thing,
yeah.
like that. But
But
I don't know if we have it in Park City.
that's not stopping thousands of people from going into Wasatch right now.
But it should.
I argue either way. I don't I actually am a big proponent of during high avalanche cycles, and please forgive me, all you avalanche experts out there, that if people want to really learn something, they should test their knowledge and go out and see what can and will happen, not by skiing a slope, but by maybe testing a slope, dropping a cornice. I carry a cornice rope so I can cut a cornice safely. And you drop 1,000, 2,000 pounds of snow on a slope, well, and it slides because you think it's going to slide. Oh, okay, cool. I get to verify my knowledge, right?
Okay.
And I think there's
You're
a lot.
not going out to just ski it.
Yeah, you got to give up on maximizing your turns, right? You got to go out, or the cool line. You can't just go there and think that that's what should happen, especially during a high cycle. During a high cycle, you should go out and to see how things look, how the wind changed everything. Maybe just see what has occurred already. There's a lot of naturals out there. And maybe just ski some low angle south facing snow because that's what's safe, right? And quite honestly, when you can ski low angle south facing snow in the Wasatch, it's kind of a privilege. It's kind of a cool zone to be in, right? You got nice aspens on 25 degrees that go forever. Yeah, you just make a bunch of wiggles and you have a great day. But in the meantime, you could look at the north side and east sides and go, wow, those look really fat and too dangerous. So I guess I say don't live in fear of going out. Just remember that there's lots of safe ways to do it, and there's lots of safe places to ski that do not have to put you in hazard's way.
The gates at Park City, are they in discussions now? Have they not started? Could we see something different before the end of the season, or this is the way it is for the rest of the season?
I don't honestly know, but I'm hoping it's not the way it is to the end of the season. We do have some time, and we're only in the second week of February, and winter only started last week. So, I mean, we do have time. And I don't know what the ski area closing dates are. I imagine the first week of April kind of thing. So, we got a little bit of time, and in the meantime, I think unfortunately for those of us who want to backcountry ski, we need to drive around to Big and Little, which there's already plenty of traffic over there, and it's sad that we might have to do that. But it's kind of the way it is at the moment. And all I would really say in the long run is I think we just have to, we have to live through some of this season kind of, which was already a shaky season. Like I said, I've decided to climb more than ski. But it's a tricky season. And yeah, it's just, we're going to have to, it's part of life, right? It got complicated suddenly, and here we are, and we're going to just have to wait until the dust settles and some decisions are made. I do believe that Park City has some really good management here, and they have a lot of experienced people from back in the old days, and they know about skier appreciation, and they know about the search for powder and backcountry skiing and wanting to do it. So I don't think anyone's gonna just slam the gate shut permanently and go, well, this just can't exist anymore because someone got hurt, because that's probably not the route that anybody.
They've not done that in the past. I mean, we've had
no
plenty of deaths through the avalanches out that way over the years, and they've never shut it down.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. Probably, unfortunately, it was one of the maybe higher death rates of any gate in the U.S. I don't know that for sure, but I bet you it's right up there with the top three. I mean, Jackson Hole probably has lost a number, and there's some Colorado resorts that have, probably lost the numbers. And Vail lost 2 last week, 3?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's a really tough year with a whole lot of pressure and a feast or famine kind of skiing experience. And all those things add up to maybe just unfortunate accidents, not even really bad decisions, just too many. Statistically, something had to go wrong. a lot of things that while you're walking up for an hour or two, there's a lot of things going on around you that you need to be taken into account, and they're clues as to maybe whether or not you're making the right decisions. And lots of people really don't pay attention at that level, and they they're chit-chatting and having fun, right? I get it, but you also need to be constantly aware of what's going on around you.
Well, and the people that got caught over the weekend were all in their 20s. So
Well, it's just got that kind of, there's the Abby science knowledge,
right. And
and
then
then
there's the
backcountry knowledge is a different,
yeah.
it's a different feel, right? It's not science. Backcountry knowledge is not scientific. It cannot replicate itself on a regular basis, right? But you learn a lot by being out there a lot and seeing things and feeling things and probably having a close call or two. And I definitely had them more than one or two. So, and most all your experts out there are going to tell you they've all had their share. And in fact, I used to joke I'd never seen an avalanche until I started skiing with avalanche experts, and back in the 70s and stuff. It was like, wow, every time I go out with these guys who know everything about it, we see avalanches. Why is that? And some of it was because, feel good about pushing on this, and it's like, oh, okay. So anyhow, I think, I think to really finish up here and for the season is just, this isn't going away. We need extreme caution this year. We had great years the last 2 years. Those years are coming back around. So this is without a doubt probably, like I said, I'm sure you can check with Craig Gordon and those guys and Drew and whatnot and go, hey, how bad is this compared to any other season? I bet you it's top 3 worst seasons ever.
Yeah. I mean, just with our snowpack. I mean,
just snowpack alone. Just, you don't even have to really sit there and say that's because of the
number of people
Just snowpack alone. It's a terrible snowpack. It has been from the get-go.
And it will be for like that base layer that we had that came in early in late November. Is there. It's not going away.
Well, if you put 4 feet of wet snow on top of it, it might go away. Maybe. But otherwise, it just keeps bridging and gaining strength and waiting for someone to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And
maybe by April, May.
Yeah, but somewhere around bike season.
That's right. You can go out and ski a couple of
quite honestly, like I said, be extremely careful. This isn't changing anytime soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Jill, it was a pleasure. Enjoy the afternoon, and I'm gonna zoom off to my board meeting in like 5 minutes.
Okay, good luck. Thank you for your time.
Hey, you betcha. Talk to you later. Okay, bye-bye.